Bamper left the Cynfelyn works after his father died and went to work in Alcoa in Mwnaloedd. He was only there for about a month when he transferred over to the works next door, IMI. There was a lot of difference in pay, and Mr. Gustavus called one day to ask if we wanted to buy the house off him for £825. We sat and talked about it, and while it was such a lot of money, we decided to go ahead. Mr. Gustavus's daughter lent us the money, and we carried on paying our rent as a mortgage, and she deducted it from the £825 until it was paid for. Bamper had swept the chimney before, and nothing went wrong. He tried it a second time without so much luck. He screwed all the rods together and put them up the chimney, and after all kinds of trying this way and that, he managed to get all the rods out, but the brush on the end was nowhere to be seen. Eventually, we decided to have a new central heating system, and that cost us £300 or more, when the head of the brush only cost 25p. What an expensive way to clean your chimney. Mr. Gustavus's daughter lent us that money too, and she said she'd lend us more in future if we needed it, but we thought it best to save up for whatever we wanted in future. Having had such a busy time with 3 young children, taking them out and about all the time, I was lost when Mike went to school. I even used to go and borrow Auntie Pauline's baby Andrea for a while. It wasn't long before Dad started working in the new mill in the Mannesman. When I was 18, I worked on the furnace mill gantry, 6-hour shifts and really good money, but it wasn't to last long. 2 months after my 18th birthday, I was called up for the forces. John Dirk and myself went together for the medical. This was another encounter with the forces. I'd already been in the Air Cadets for 18 months. We talked about it and decided to sign on for 3 years so we could get a little bit more money. We were sent to Catterick for our square bashing in the June. What a hectic 3 months. We were bullied and had minor punishments. The discipline was harsh, but I think it did me more good than anything. We marched for 6 hours a day. We'd done all our physical training with a rifle, and it was hard work. I'd never been fitter in my life. I was passed out from my basic training in the beginning of September and was given a week's leave before going for my basic weapon training. We were taught to fire different kinds of weapon, self-defence, map reading, and other different forms of defence. We still maintained a very high standard of discipline. We were stationed in West Kirby in Liverpool, and having my cousin with me throughout this helped me a great deal. While we were in West Kirby, John and me picked up with a few Welshmen. There was Len Thomas, Sid Thurlow, Jim Lewis, Don Hook, and a couple of others whose names I've forgotten. In the middle of November, we were sent home for 2 weeks and were told to report to Lytham St Anne's by the end of the month, when we would be given our different postings. I've forgotten to mention that when we had our medicals, we picked up a boy from Penclouth, and he was still with us. His name was Malcolm Jones, and he was a real nice bloke. When we got home, my mother and father were pretty upset that we didn't know how long we would be posted for or where we would be going. My mother said she was going to have a party for us. We invited Malcolm, and our house was full, especially after the pub shut. Malcolm and my cousin Margaret hit it off straight away. My sister and Shirley, her best friend, invited 2 boys they had met in a dance only a few days before. Their names were Derek and Tommy. We left Swansea at the very end of November for Lytham St Anne's in Blackpool. John, Malcolm and myself stayed at the embarkation camp for a week. In that week it snowed terrible. Then we were told our destination. For how long we didn't know. John and Malcolm were going to Aden in the Middle East. I was going to the Suez Canal. For the first time in our lives, John and I were going to be separated. I flew to Egypt in a Hastings. Our first stop on the way was Malta. It was the 4th of December, and the weather when we landed was beautiful. We had to stop for 6 hours to refuel and recheck the aeroplane. It needed it as well. It rattled all the way over. I can't remember how long it took us, but I was glad to get off the plane when we arrived. We landed in a place called Fayed on one of the hottest and sunniest days I'd ever known. We were literally put straight into lorries and taken to our camps. I was with 5 other Welshmen, plus half a dozen more blokes we'd been friendly with in Catterick and Liverpool. We were taken to a camp in a nothing place called El Hamra. The camp was called Chalufa. It was the air base for the Lincolnshire bombers, later known as Lancaster bombers. When we got into the camp, we found we were joining 62 Rifle Squadron, but the whole lot of them were out of camp. They were a mobile unit and they were out guarding a bomb dump which had been robbed. So we were told that we would have to do guard duty with the RAF. Incidentally, we were the RAF Regiment. The squadron were due back for Christmas. The first night I was one of the unlucky ones to start guard duty. I was put on patrol guard out on the main road in front of the camp. When we got so far away from the camp, it got very dark. The RAF bloke said to me, "If an officer comes to check on us, will you challenge him?" Naturally, that was right up my street. I was in the regiment. "Certainly," I said. "It'll be a pleasure." Mind you, he did say the duty officer was horrible and that he was never satisfied with anything. Anyway, it was around 1 a.m. when we heard footsteps coming towards us. This bloke I was with said, "Oh God, he's coming." When I thought he was near and I saw his shadow, I raised my rifle with its bayonet fixed and shouted, "Halt! Who goes there? Friend or foe?" "Friend," he replied. "Advance, friend, and be recognised," I said. "Please produce identification." He showed me his 1250, that's his identity card. He was a flying officer. "Excellent," said the officer. "Well done. There's only one thing wrong. You should have challenged me a little later. I could have shot you from that distance. Let's try it again, shall we?" With that, he went back down the road. A few minutes later, he shouted, "I'm coming. Get ready." So I was more nervous than the first time. All of a sudden, he was there. So I thrust my rifle forward to challenge him, and the bayonet caught the side of his cheek and cut him open. I never saw him again after. I don't know why.